Hey guys, this is Fady from Harvey Productions and welcome to the studio. Today's video I'm very excited about. I've actually been waiting for that video for a while. So I've had my hand on this unit for quite a bit, which is the Antelope new compressor. It's the A4-1B, which is basically their clone of the CL-1B, which if any of us worked in studios before, you'll be very familiar with the CL-1B. It's one of the mostly commonly used opto compressors because of its features and what it does. It's one of my favorite compressors I've ever used. And it sounds great on so many sources. So recently, Antelope released that unit. And Antelope is trying to keep up with the technology. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, I've talked a little bit about my West Audio units, which are pure analog units with digital recall. And then Antelope did the same thing with that unit, which I absolutely love the idea of a digital recall and what that does. So we're going to get in all specs and details. We're going to go through the unit. We're going to go through the digital recall, what's the differences, and then we're also going to go through some samples in here, and we're going to apply the compressor on some samples, and we get to listen to it. So before we start with anything, let's start with out of the box. When you open that unit, out of the box, here's kind of what you see. So let me share my screen here. So on the front, it looks very, very similar to what CL-1B does. So I'm going to go from the left controls to the right controls. So this is your compress and bypass. So compression is engaged, compressor is engaged, bypass, but the signal is still passing through the unit, which is cool because you still get a little bit of coloration of the actual chain inside the unit. Then the next is your gain, which is the gain ranges from off, no gain, all the way to plus 30 dB, decibels. And then the ratio is the next thing. It's from 2:1 ratio all the way to 10:1 ratio. And then the next one over here is your threshold, which is from plus 20 dBu to negative 40 dBu. And then after that is your attack down here at the bottom left, which is fast to slow. So if you have it all the way to the fastest, which would be 0.5 millisecond, and then the slowest is 300 millisecond. And then the next is your release, which is fast and slow as well. And the fast would be 0.05 second, and then the slowest release is 10 seconds. And then the next is the timing, which is one of the things that makes that compressor as well as the CL-1B and all similar clones stand out. So you have three settings for how the compression behave. So the first one is fixed, which basically once you have it on fixed, your attack and release, these knobs really don't do anything at all. It doesn't matter where you have them. And basically what those fixed ratios are, it's almost like you have your attack at fast, which is at 1 millisecond, and your release is at 50 milliseconds. So it's a fixed ratio of 1 millisecond attack, 50 millisecond release, and there is no, doesn't matter what you do with these. And then I'm going to go to custom and then go to hybrid. Custom is basically fully custom, which means your attack and release are in full mode. So whatever I have it is really what's doing. If it's super fast or super slow or any in between, that's what that is. And then hybrid is a really cool feature. And basically it makes the attack fixed at 1 millisecond. So this is not going to do anything. But this, it does some work to it. And what it does, which is actually pretty cool, it starts with a fast attack, and then it transitions into whatever manual setting I have, which almost creates like a dual stage release, a quicker one and a slower one. What does that mean? And this is a little bit different than auto release, because what it does, this is like almost two layers. So let's say I had on hybrid, and then I had, obviously the attack is fast, so it's going to capture my transients pretty quick. And then my release, let's say I have it very slow. So what's going to do is going to start with a quick release, and then it's going to follow the signal. And if the signal has sustain or something, it's a longer signal, it's going to have switch from fast release to slow release. or vice versa. I'm starting on a really slow release, super slow. So it's going to start with a very slow release and then it's going to go back to the other one, which is the dual stage. Is like it's really cool for like buses and mixed buses and stuff like that. It's just one of the cool features that the unit has that I really like. And it works really well on like vocals and when you have like this long notes and for the release and that dual stage release. So going back to the unit, moving on, obviously this is meter, it's really straightforward. And what it is it's either you're showing your input signal, your reduction, or your output signal. And then at the bottom here, you have, this is your sidechain link. It's either off or bus one and bus two, which you have two connections on the back of the unit, one for bus one, one for bus two. You can use it for sidechaining, but then you can also use it for stereo linking. And it was a little tricky because when you see the word sidechain, you don't think of stereo linking. So, and I talked with Antelope engineer about this to clarify that part. Let's say I have two of these units, and then it's connected to bus one. So what I would do is I'll set it up to bus one, and then one is the master unit, one is the slave unit, and then on the slave unit, I'll just grab my threshold and turn it off all the way to off, and I'm going to match gain and I'm going to match ratio, so that way I can have proper stereo imaging and they're equal. I'm sorry, proper stereo signal, so they're both equal. And then whatever threshold I do on the main one, it will uh, set up the amount of reduction on both units. Really what it does, it grabs whatever more reduction, the unit that has more reduction, and makes that the master and the other one is a slave. But for the peace of mind, just turn the threshold off on the slave unit, and then that way you have one threshold on one unit, and then it would reduce both at the same amount and apply the same amount of threshold on both signals. And then next is the automation button, which we'll talk about, or light, not button, it's a light, which we'll talk about when we get to the unit plugin. And then you have master on and off on the unit. So really straightforward, very, very similar to what a standard CL-1B does, except for the digital recall and plugin control. So let's kind of take a quick look here. So the first thing, when you open your Antelope launcher, which is where you're going to control any of your Antelope devices. So I'm going to grab that and put it on the screen here. So when I first open my Antelope launcher, this is what you see. You guys can see I have my Galaxy and then I have that unit. And then I can open the control panel of that unit, which let me zoom in a little bit. It gives me a calibration. So I'm actually leaving on the screen the actual unit so you guys can see the actual unit. So this is a really cool feature that Antelope added. Obviously calibrate VU meter, which is a very standard. So I'll press calibrate and then you guys can see it automatically moved to 0 and then done. And boom, I got my VU meter calibrated, and I can also calibrate to different reference levels as 0, -10, 4 dBu, and 20 dBu. Now, the other thing that is really cool about this unit is the opto cell calibration. So let's kind of explain this really quick. So opto compressors, like this one, like the LA2A or whatever other units that have opto compressors, those opto units over time, they don't respond identically the same. So let's say you are running this in a mixing session, and then in 2 years, you open back that mixing session and run it through the same compressor at the same signal chain that you had and same level. They're not going to be exactly identical because over time, the opto cells change a little bit. What Antelope did, because they have digital signal calibration, they and I don't fully understand the technology behind it, is a little bit complex, but basically what it does, it recalibrates the opto cells and it applies compensation to it or whatever. So that way it sounds exactly the same. So after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years of using that unit, and you run the same signal through it, it will sound identically exactly the same if you calibrate the opto cell, which is a really cool advantage of that unit that a lot of other units I've actually never seen that in any other opto unit for calibration. I've also confirmed with the engineers about this, about the life of the tubes in the cell, and they said, basically, as from their own mouth, they said the tube is probably the last thing you're going to need to replace on that unit. They last forever, so you don't have to worry about tubes. Now, about modding, and if you want to adjust the tube and adjust the modding, I personally haven't done this. I'm sure it can work, and you can add different mods and different tubes. Now, how would that be accurate with the calibration and with the digital recalls and all that kind of stuff? I am not really sure if it will work well or not, but just giving you guys the heads up. Okay, so going back to my screen here, if you don't have the plugin, you're just going to go to plugins, and then you're just going to find the plugin in here. So the A4 bridge plugin, and this is where you install it. And it's showing that I have the newest version of the plugin. So done. Okay, let's go through the plugin. So this is what the plugin looks like. I'm going to put it in the middle of the screen here and zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. So it basically imitates everything on the unit. So I'm leaving on the screen the hardware of the unit so you guys can see. And then this is what's really cool. These knobs are like physical knobs. They actually move. Unlike the West Audio knobs, they're like more like digital knobs. These are physical knobs that I'm moving. But then you can see if I move this, it moves also the physical knob. So it's up to you if you want to use digital or physical, but they both respond. Same for the ratio, responds in the same manner. Threshold responds in the same manner. Attack, same manner. Release, same manner. The only things that don't respond are these. See, this doesn't. You cannot do this because this is different. You have to do this from the hardware. And the sidechain and the link, you have to do this from the hardware. I cannot move it on the plugin. And then the meter, obviously you have to do this from the hardware. You cannot do this on the plugin. And then that's for those. And then let's go to the bottom screen. So the bottom screen gives you some more options on that plugin that are not physically present on the unit, which I really like. One is A and B options. So I can adjust my gain, my ratio, my attack, my threshold, and then I'm on custom mode, and then I'm going to go to B, and then my B option is this. Here is my B option. And then I can just go here and A-B my stuff, and you can see all the stuff are moving on the unit, which is really cool. Then the other thing, let's go back to A, is here, sidechain filter. It's allowing you to apply a sidechain filter. So it's either completely off, or it's a low pass filter, or it's a specific frequency, and you can change that frequency, which makes it kind of work like a de-esser, honestly, in a way. And then a high pass. And this is also another, sorry. And this is also another form of a de-esser. And choosing the frequency. And then you can choose two different slopes for those, like more of a narrow one or a wide one, and again, adjusting the frequency of this. I really love that feature because it adds a lot to the unit and makes it really, it does a lot of, more like if you are familiar with like C6 or Pro Key or something like that, it's kind of does the same concept, but now we're doing this with an actual analog unit. So this is everything the plugin does, and because I'm using Pro Tools, I can just right click on the plugin and I can do automation dialog, and then I can write any of these automations, and then I can automate, and then you'll see the automation light is on. And then what it will do is it will write automation while you are mixing, which is really cool because your gain is changing from one part of the song to the other. or your threshold. There's a section in the song you want to compress a little bit more, and a section in the song you want to compress a little bit less. You can write that automation and save it, and it will save all the presets for you in the session. So this is kind of going through everything from a technical standpoint, just covering all the technical side of the unit. Let's now kind of go through some samples. I have some samples for bass, drums, guitars, vocals, and we're just going to quickly go through it and just kind of demo what the unit sounds like and what it does. I'm going to use my headphones here so I don't have bleed through the camera, and then let's take a listen. So I'm going to leave the screen like this, where you see the plugin. You also see the hardware unit at the same time. And then let's start with custom. And let's start with a bass guitar. And I have here my Flock audio, if you guys seen any of my previous videos. So my Flock audio is running the compressor through it. I just want to confirm. Yeah, here's the A1 compressor. It's active and it's running through the chain. So the first, I'm just going to bypass the compressor. Right here. This is one of the buttons that you have to physically do it. And let's grab a vocal first, because really CL-1B is one of the things that we use a lot on vocals. I'm going to put that hardware insert on this female vocal. Let's select that section. And now it's completely bypassed.
Shine so bright, shine so bright.
So let's do first no threshold. Let's put the gain at 0. Super fast attack, super fast release, very minimal ratio. And then let's turn it back on.
Shine so bright, shine so bright.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to loop this, and then I'm going to deactivate it from the Flock audio, because what that does, it completely skips this unit. So you're not getting any coloration from that unit at all. And let's kind of notice a difference.
Shine so bright, shine so bright, shine so bright.
So I think you heard a little bit of a difference. The tonality changed just a hair, which is basically passing through the circuit of that compressor. Or okay, so now let's do what I'm gonna do is I want to loop a small section, not a big section. And then let's start messing with the threshold, and let's kind of work on that vocal a little bit.
And we'll shine so bright, 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 and we'll shine so bright.
I love the more rounded, a little bit more punch to it, which what I would expect. Let's kind of work with the side filter, and I want to kind of sidechain the sidechain filter, and I want to try to get rid of some of those higher frequencies in her voice, or kind of compress those a little bit.
And we'll shine so bright, 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 and what shines so bright, and what what shines so bright, and what shines so bright, and what shines so bright, and what shines so bright.
So one of the main things we're noticing is her vocals are getting a little bit more rounded, and that little bit of harshness around that 3K is kind of going away a little bit. Okay, so let's try the hybrid mode, and let's see if that same section, I'm going to turn off the sidechain filter, and let's try the hybrid mode here and see what would that make it sound like. I'm going to do a slow release. So basically, it's going to be a fast release, and then it will transition into a slow release afterwards.
And what shines so bright, 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 and what shines so bright.
So to be honest, I kind of like the hybrid more. I like the different tonality. I can tell the different tonality in her vocals, and I can tell that it's getting a bit more punch from it. And you guys can tell I was messing with the gain and threshold to make sure that at the end of the day, compressor on and off, it's about the same amount of decibels that you're hearing. I'm also pushing it really hard. I was kind of reducing close to 10 dB, and I'm not hearing any distortion. It's super clean, signal's super clean. I don't have any issue with it. Let's try a different source. So let's try a drum room mic. So I'm going to put that here on a drum room mic. Let's kind of loop that section, and I'm going to mess with it. So on drums, you can tell the difference, and actually, there's a lot more difference happening on the drums. I went from a tight kit to a punchier kit to a lot of snap on the snare, to a lot of sustain on the snare, to a lot of snap on the kick, to a lot of compression, and to just really subtle compression. And I've been messing with it a little bit, and I really like it. I mean, it's giving me, it's very versatile of where I'm going and how much I can do with it. One thing I noticed about that unit specifically, I'm getting the difference in like amount of compression and all what I'm expecting a compressor to do. I'm not getting a lot of coloring though, which it depends on what you're looking for. Uh, it's more like it's clean. It's cleaner. It's not super clean like my Grace compressor from my M103. It's like super clean. It will just literally just do reduction and then gain compensation, make up gain, and that's about it. And how much threshold. There's not much happening else. This one is adding a little bit of coloring, but not too much coloring. So I compared this to my opto, which I know it's not a fair comparison, but to my like warm audio one, which I've done a video comparison for the warm audio versus the original LA2A. They add a bit more color than this much is adding color wise. So if you're looking for an opto compressor and having all the opto functionality with digital recall and all these extra bells and whistles, but then also not coloring your tone too much, I ca- that's a great unit. For me, since I've been using my U67 as my microphone, my main microphone, and I love the tone and everything of the U67, I stopped using my warm audio 2A because it's adding too much color to the U67, which I want to maintain my U67 color. So I actually stopped using that compressor, and then I'm using now this one instead because I love the opto features, the compression in here, the punch that I'm getting to the vocals, but without tweaking too much the tone of my U67 because I love how it sounds and I don't want to change that tone too much. If that makes sense. Um, I hope this is more of um, a full detailed explanation between the specs, what the unit does, some audio samples. One more thing we haven't talked about is the plugin. So on the plugin, they have two options. You can either buy a perpetual license for the plugin and then it goes to your iLock and then you own it forever. Or when you buy the unit, it comes with a 1 year subscription to all of their plugins for free, including that plugin. And after that, you can, I guess, subscribe to that plugin or all the plugins. So you got two options, whether you want it in a subscription form or without a subscription form. You don't have to use the plugin at all. You can run the unit without a plugin as a full analog unit. You're just going to miss a couple features. Obviously, you cannot automate the unit. And then the sidechain filter and choosing the frequency of the sidechain filter, you will lose that option. So that's the two things you will miss with the plugin, which, in my opinion, if I'm getting a unit with a digital recall feature to it, the plugin is worth every penny for it. I think it's like an extra $100 or something when you buy the unit to get the license for the plugin. So I hope this is helpful for you. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment below, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of them. And make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys at the next video.